Hello and welcome to 11FS Spotlight. My name is David Brear, coming to you live from Money 2020 in Las Vegas. In this show, we shine a bit of a spotlight on the best and the brightest in the tech and financial services industry to try and understand what is it that gets them going, growing, and what they really think the future of the industry will look like. On today's Spotlight, I'm delighted to be joined by Lindsey Argalas, the COO over at TaxBit. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks so much.
This morning, I say it's this morning, like that shows how little I know what time zone it is. Yeah,
exactly.
We've been in a building with no like natural light for a couple of days. So
time flies when we're having fun.
It really does, it really does. But Money 2020 been good to you so far?
It's been fantastic, super busy, great energy this year. It seems like everyone's back.
Yeah, very little masks and a lot of energy in the room, isn't there? Which is good. So, so what we're going to be doing today is talking a little bit about your career, the regulatory landscape more broadly in terms of where we sort of see the US market going, but sort of with a global view as well. There's a lot of things that are happening overseas that are really sort of taking the fancy. But maybe if we start a little bit about, give us the 1 minute pitch for you guys. I mean, the stand here is amazing. There's a lot of people milling around, but tell us what you guys do.
Yes, thank you. So TaxBit is the leading tax and accounting solution for digital assets. And so whoever knew that tax and accounting could be such an interesting space, but we're frankly overwhelmed by the interest right now in compliance and the ever-evolving regulatory landscape. So we were founded in 2018 by two brothers, one chartered accountant and one tax attorney, so deep origins in the disciplines of tax and accounting. We serve enterprises that deal with digital assets, so whether that's enabling their consumers to buy, sell, or hold crypto, or others that might deal with NFTs, or frankly just hold crypto on the balance sheet. So all of these companies need tax and accounting solutions. We also work closely with the IRS, so another key stakeholder in the ecosystem. So we have a suite of tax products, from identity verification, producing tax forms, enabling exchanges to have good experiences for customers to do like gain loss, tax optimization, things of that sort. And so we're connected to over 500 wallets and exchanges, covered 10,000 plus tokens, constantly evolving. As we know, it's hard to keep up on the rapid changes in this space. But again, all of that is underpinned by very modern API-first technology. And so given the complexities that you see in digital assets, very hard for incumbent software to do that. But that's why we're really using this combination of subject matter experts with modern technology to deliver against this, fairly recent need that has emerged in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's an amazing growth space in that sense.
Yes.
I imagine the IRS like you a lot in the sense of making understanding tax in this asset's a little bit easier.
Yes, they do. I mean, just again, anything that we collectively can do to drive compliant adoption in the ecosystem is something that we're very passionate about, as I know are many other players here that are at this conference.
Yeah, and being COO, I mean that's a lot. I know it covers a multitude of sins there in terms of what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
But talk us through a little bit and it sounds like the founders have got fantastic background in the subject matter. But
yes.
I mean, you're the engine making this stuff happen in that sense.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about what does the day-to-day look like?
Yes. So I joined TaxBit about 4 months ago, and I have a background of leading very large institutions and helping and scale large, fast-growing businesses. And so I come in and I help, set the strategy, help do resource allocation, making sure that we're making progress and we're betting on the right things for the future and working on the right initiatives now. I also run all the go-to-market teams, customer success teams. So a lot under my scope and responsibility, but really just trying to help build out the leadership capabilities and complement our two co-founders who are immensely talented and bring a little bit of the experience that I have from the ecosystem to bear as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very different role in that sense, right?
Yes.
Because the landscape when it comes to the regulation in this space is emerging at best in that sense, in terms of actually what you guys are trying to adhere to there. So, this isn't just a mortgage book in that sense, in terms of the speed of change that's happening there. So, I mean, talk to me a little bit about that, because that must be a pretty difficult thing to keep on top of.
It is. And so we are certainly operating in an environment of ambiguity. And so there's a couple ways that we tackle that. One is this close partnership, again, with the IRS and various public sector regulatory bodies, in constant conversation. That's very important for us to continue to learn, but also to share our insights, what we're seeing in the industry in terms of industry readiness and desire, right, for adoption. So that's kind of one piece. We're constantly working very closely with our customers as well. We have a set of solutions that we're already in the market with, but continuing getting their feedback to continue to address their evolving requirements. And then last but not least, we're also partnered with some big industry players like a couple of the big four accounting firms, right? So working with, again, experts and influencers across the ecosystem and continually, again, refining our product and our role in the ecosystem. And so, chaotic on the one hand, but also I think really exhilarating and pretty energizing, right, to have an active role in helping shape the way that this ecosystem evolves.
Yeah. And what sort of problems are you seeing from a customer's perspective here? There's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to tax in a digital asset world in that sense. More broadly, I guess the biggest one might be just avoiding this altogether, right? Which is right, probably not the answer that many people want.
I think, over the last 12 months, we've evolved a lot because people realize that clearly the regulators want to get a handle on the situation, and that's good for the financial system and the economy. So that is coming. So I think that's one. Second, we're clearly waiting for the specificity on regulations, and there is genuine desire, intent from most parties, I would say, to be compliant, but looking for that extra specificity so that we know the details on how we implement, when we implement, et cetera. And I think, the reality is just to be compliant in digital assets is extremely complex, right? So the nature of this asset class, right? High price volatility, very high transaction volumes, unlike equities or some other assets which are less frequently traded, fractionalized ownership, right? A lot of these things just compound and make it very difficult for companies to comply, which is why you can't do it manually, right? And you really can't use the incumbent software, which is why modern and new technology solutions are needed. So it provides an interesting opportunity, of course, for us and other players that are similarly tackling this need.
Yeah. And it feels, as you say, the sort of regulatory space in this sense is, this isn't done. This is a very evolving landscape,
yes.
Not just from what is a digital asset in that sense, but as you say, specifically how that applies to tax. I mean, there seems to be a lot of change on the horizon here. What other things are you seeing? Yeah.
So, first I'll talk about the United States and then we'll talk about the international framework in a moment. In the United States, last year, passed into law was the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and part of the revenue source to fund all of that investment was basically closing the loophole on crypto. And so some of the regulations coming into effect that we know is a certain definition and classification of people as a digital asset broker that will now have certain reporting requirements, right, to provide tax forms to their customers like you would for equities, to actually do proper tax identity verification to assume that that person is who they say they are, and that it works with the tax. And then also that you have regulations and requirements around transfers as well. So we do know the pillars of the bill that has already been passed into law, and now we're just waiting for specificity on, I would say the exact details of the implementation and the timeline. But everyone in the industry is well aware that it's coming, and I think, again, we as an industry are preparing for that.
Yeah. And you sort of said a little bit about the sort of further context outside of the US. There's quite a different approach in different geos in the, some people are sort of doing this still in some various different guises, but like you say, there's quite a progressive approach to this is going to be regulated. There are going to be some tax implications in the not too distant future, but how are you seeing that planning out globally?
As many people are probably aware, the OECD came out a couple weeks ago with the crypto asset reporting framework. And again, that provides some very nice high-level guidelines. We do expect that this is something that will then need to be adapted locally at a country-specific level, and that will probably take years, frankly, to get implemented. Some countries are acting more quickly than others. As we saw, the new Prime Minister of the UK is very pro-crypto, and so I would expect the UK to act very quickly in finalizing those regulations, and then some other ones, maybe a little bit slower. That is very similar to things that we've seen with similar international regulation in the past with CRS, the Common Reporting Standards, and FATCA, which was the US version of that. So these things often coexist. right? But you do need to wait for the very local specific regulations to come out.
Yeah.
But again, now we have a North Star and a guiding framework with which the individual countries will be crafting the legislation, which is great.
Yeah. And what does that mean for you guys? Obviously, building software to deal with quite flexible, ever-changing regulation in that sense. That's, again, normal tax regulations are pretty well understood. They're pretty balanced. They don't change so dramatically, in terms of the principles in there. But for you guys, building a platform that can cope with reasonably liquid landscapes in that sense, that must be quite an interesting challenge.
It is an interesting challenge, and this is not too dissimilar from my experience at Intuit, where I was a long time, again, on tax and accounting software. And so there are certain ways that we are building our tax engine that accommodates for, we know that this piece of the tax engine will be very local specific, and so we build it to be modularized in that capacity. And then there are other things that we just know are going to be very standard across the world. And so it's very important, though, when building a platform, that flexibility is built into it and that there's very good architecture up front with the goal to take it internationally. And that is very much what we're doing at TaxBit. We're squarely focused, on US in the immediate term. We have recently announced a UK launch because our clients are pulling us to launch in the UK and many other markets. So we absolutely have the plan to expand internationally and have that foresight in the way that we're building the product and platform. But as we know, going into international markets is a very difficult thing. The market opportunity is no doubt there, but we need to make sure that we're ready to accommodate it.
Yeah, well, it's great you're in the position, though, that there's customer demands that draws you to a place. It's doing it the other way is a lot more difficult in that sense. But it's nice to see people wanting to get ahead of this, because it's like I say, it's an obvious thing that's coming down the road, and planning for this avoids a pretty big problem down the line.
Yes,
isn't it?
it's a pleasant problem to have. I mean, a lot of companies who look to expand internationally, right, have to then go and build the entire go-to-market engine. Yeah. We are very fortunate to have, large enterprises that have an international footprint. If anything, are pulling us to UK and Europe, to Singapore and Asia, to Brazil. And so if anything, it's just trying to keep up with the demand, because we have so many ways that we could grow and expand, and trying to be disciplined and do whatever we choose to do very well.
Yeah. One of the other sort of announcements this week that you guys have put out was your Cost Basis Interchange product. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So for those that aren't aware, Cost Basis Interchange is basically the capability or the need as an individual makes a transfer from one exchange to another exchange, but still to their account. One of the biggest challenges in the industry is that information of what they purchased that Bitcoin or that Ethereum at doesn't transfer with them. And as a result, that places a huge burden on the individual then come tax filing time, to determine what their gain or loss was on that Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever it was when they go to sell it. And so this is a solution that plagues the industry, both end users as well as the enterprises or the exchanges. To give you a sense, on our consumer product, a third of all of our customer contacts have to do with missing cost basis. Help me, I'm trying to file my taxes, I'm trying to get the accurate calculation, and that's difficult to do. And so we have a technology in our tax engine that basically is an automated flag for exchanges when we see that it's a transfer from, David on, Binance to David on Gemini, right? An automated flag, and then we will send the information with that transaction to the receiving exchange, and so that information goes until you actually make a transaction and need to calculate the gain or loss. So it's a really important need in the industry, and something that we are hoping, again, will not only increase the accuracy, but also take a lot of effort and work out of the system as well.
Yeah, I mean, and again, sort of with all of that frequency of those types of exchanges, doing all of that down the line is going to be quite painful for people in that sense.
Exactly. And so without what we call CBI or Cost Basis Interchange, without that, you have each exchange trying to figure out manually how to do it, sending and sharing in different data formats, and they're doing that with all the other exchanges in the system. And so you can imagine that's a complete mess. And so this is something that we should have an industry standard for. And so we announced yesterday not only the launch or the capability, but also 12 founding members, which are many of the large exchanges as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, this whole space is such a community-driven thing in that sense. I mean, whether it's products like this or the move to the UK, I imagine there's sort of open doors, as you say, when it comes to people sort of wanting these things and the pull in that sense. So, I mean, how much do you do to sort of talk to the community around these things? You talked a little bit about this earlier on in terms of product development, but I guess, feedback's pretty free from this community in that sense as well.
It is. And again, I think one of the very nice things is I think most of us have this shared goal, again, of driving or enabling compliant adoption of digital assets, right? We fundamentally believe that this is a better way, and it makes it more accessible, more modern, right, more efficient, many benefits that come with it. And so there's a lot of free sharing of information, even amongst competitors. Obviously, there are some things that are off limits, but things generally that will advance the industry. Same thing, as I mentioned, with regulators and various kind of public sector bodies. You have other governments that then come in and learn from the IRS. And so there's just a lot of information sharing, because we've seen what happens when things aren't regulated or aren't, where we're not all working together. Actually, that does a real disservice to the potential that we see.
Yeah. Well, and it's an interesting one out, in more mainstream regulation. I think the FCA says it sort of takes a network to catch a network in that sense. And, the more all of these things work collectively together, the better the outcomes are.
The better off we'll be as an overall system.
100%.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's next for you guys then? I mean, I think we've probably talked about 6 or 7 new product ideas in this talk just now, but I mean, the product roadmap must be pretty long for what you guys want to get to.
It is. I think, we have a very big vision. Like I said, we have the benefit of excellent partners and clients that are pulling us even in new directions and into new geographies. But right now, we're immediately focused on, first of all, delivering an amazing tax season, right? We are gearing up and equipping our enterprise clients so that they can deliver very well for their customers in the beginning of the tax, tax filing season. So super focused on that, and again, continue to just deliver great experience to our customers and partners. And, I think we have no shortage of growth opportunities. If anything, that's one of the things that I feel is part of my role, is trying to prioritize so that we continue delivering really well, and then in a very scalable way, tackle this growth that we see ahead of us.
Yeah. One of our founders always says, startups don't starve, they drown, and very much when you've got such great momentum when it comes to a great community and a great product solving with such great product market fit, then
it's both a blessing and a curse. That's what I said. I've never seen product market fit like this, so that is a delight on the one hand. But how you manage that and sequence it right is something that is also a challenge. And so that's something that we're very fortunate, but we think about every day. How do we deliver great customer experience to the partners that are already working with us? And how can we continue to add more value to them and help them as they weather this crypto winter and prepare for that next phase of growth?
Fantastic. Well, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing to learn a little bit more about what you guys are up to and the successes you've had. I mean, we always try and sort of end and, we're sort of rapidly running out of time with a bit more of a view from your perspective, because I mean, the background that you've had, the career that you've had, it's all quite easy to sort of make this look too easy in some instances, but there's a lot of things that I'm sure on that journey. So what sort of advice would you give somebody getting into the industry or to your younger self in that sense, just sort of getting into this game in the first place?
Yes, I love it. First of all, to your point earlier, it's a very welcoming community. There are tremendous amount of resources and assets available because, again, we're all trying to invest in the education and bring more people along with us. So I would say, first of all, learn as much as you can. Don't be shy, ask all of the questions. I think there's a lot of companies that have been also cautiously been waiting by the sidelines, again, that are gearing up. Again, make use of the resources, the experts. It's a very open community. And I think, don't be scared, jump in, right? And don't be afraid to learn. I think that's one of the most invigorating things for me is that I've had a career in fintech and financial services, but I fundamentally have a lot of conviction that this is the future. And so it's a great learning opportunity for me too. And so again, we all bring a different angle or perspective. And I think we'll be much better off as a collective if we're having just a variety of experiences and viewpoints jumping in.
Yeah, we often talk about the sort of future fabric of financial services and the regulatory changes, the technological changes, what is a financial services in that sense. All of this is sort of shifting. It's it's a pretty wonderful time to work in FS in that sense, isn't it?
It's
we're
super
not
exciting.
faffing around with credit cards and worrying about, mainframe systems. There's a much broader agenda now, which is a great time to do.
Kind of a rewiring, right? And solving some of the perpetual challenges that have plagued the financial system, in the last several decades. So pretty exciting. It's a blank canvas and exciting to be part of it.
Fantastic. All right, well, we're going to have to wrap up there, I'm afraid, because we're running out of time, and I'm pretty sure you've got another appointment to disappear to somewhere on the floor. But thank you so much for joining us. Where can people learn a little bit more about you personally and the company as well?
Perfect. Yeah, you can find both me and TaxBit, of course, on LinkedIn and also on Twitter, and look forward to following us. Fantastic.
As for me, you can always find me on LinkedIn, lurking somewhere. And that's all the time that we have for you this week, though. Make sure you follow 11FS on LinkedIn, Twitter, every social media channel at this stage, and keep up with all the cool stuff that we're up to. Hope you enjoy the show. Do subscribe to the 11FS YouTube channel, where you can also catch up on all the other previous episodes of this show as well. Have a great week, everybody. Goodbye.